Greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I remind everybody hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. All is appreciated. And the StreamYard link is there for anybody else that wants to join. We've got Dean O's. Dean, how you doing tonight? And John. Greetings, everybody.
Greetings, brothers. How are you doing?
Very well here, enjoying the nice weather in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty hot here. I think it's around 100.
Yeah?
But I'm in the same boat. I got tort claim things I still got to figure out.
Yeah? Well, we're going to go over some details and hopefully we'll help everybody figure that out. But again, like I've expressed before, is it's a matter of taking it out of the administrative hands and putting it in the judicial hands to then be able to construct an administrative procedure that would fit. It's still all got to be there. You're just going to mimic it on the private side. So we're going to go over that in the judicial element here tonight.
Well, I got a question about that, Keith, because, you know, I realize that most of what we talk about and study and we go over in, you know, the groups that we're part of and the people we do a lot of studying with, it's all about the judicial. At some point, I'm over here scratching my head. If we need a check and a balance, why are we not going to the legislature and saying, I'm almost thinking I need to go tell them to make a private law for me at this point.
Well, we're going to go over, let's go over the first one. Let's make the first one legal actions by debt collectors, because that's the actual capacity they're actually acting in, performing under, is that they're posing that there's some kind of debt and they've got to collect it from you. And under 15 U.S. Code 1692I, which is Title 15, Foreign, Interstate, and Commerce. Legal actions by debt collectors, and it succinctly says, venue under A, any debt collector who brings any legal action on a debt against any consumer shall, in the case of an action to enforce an interest in real property, securing the consumer's obligation, bring such action only in a judicial district or similar legal entity. They're always talking about a legal entity of some sort, in which such real property is located, or, and then it goes into a second part. So let's break this down. In the case of an action to enforce an interest in real property, securing the consumer's obligation, bring such action only in a judicial district or similar legal entity. So it's a legal entity and not in your private capacity. That's what we talked about with the birth certificate standards, creating that public entity. That's that legal entity. That's their creation. In the case of an action not described in paragraph 1, bring such an action only in the judicial district again, or similar legal entity. And it doesn't say administrative, it says judicial, in which such consumer signed the contract sued upon, or in which the consumer resides. There's that resident. For income tax purposes, which is a no person shall reside within the zone except federal, state, or municipal officers or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. Does that make sense? That's why we break down resides, because that's where they're coming at. In which such consumers signed the contract sued upon, and then somebody charged off the debt through the tax of IRS. That's who they charged it off through. Now that it's been charged off, can somebody perch interest in the security? That's what they're selling, is the interest in the security. They're not calling an actual debt, and the interest in the security is just the position or disposition of a debt by the data elements. That's all they bought, was the data elements of the account. Now they're coming forth without good faith for unjust enrichment because they bought that account for pennies on the dollar and then went to a court venue, judicial district, to enforce an interest in real property because they purchased the security, but they have no contract. And if you don't have a resident, then they fail number 2. Number 1 says bring such action only in a judicial district or legal entity in which such real property is located. So the problem is this legal entity. That's what they're naming the individual whose name and number identify the record. In, on, and otherwise. On a debt against any consumer in the case of an action to enforce an interest in real property, securing the consumer's obligation, and the security itself is real property. You can have that security, but you cannot allege it as a debt against me because you have no contract. I'm not a resident, and the person that you will state is the original creditor has already charged it off to the IRS. Does that make sense? Is everybody following so far?
Yeah, and one definition of resident is the principal place of business.
Yep. So let's take a look at another one. I gotta drop this off and bring up another one. This simple little thing I wrote in regards to my companion's situation, which would basically apply to everything. You would just change the names and such around. This is basically called an admit or deny or an interrogatory or something like that. You're going to have them admit or deny by circling 1. And then the basic statement is the record does have evidence, in fact, that Joyce is a resident in the state of Iowa. You have to tell me yes or no. Because this is the facts that they're trying to testify to in these courts. The original creditor is Capital One. They will tell you yes. They will answer this one yes. If they answer, they will answer this one yes for sure. They already admit that. Joyce signed a contract with Portfolio Recovery Associates, LLC. Yes or no? They better put no because there is no such contract. Portfolio Recovery Associates, LLC has a private right of action. Yes or no? If they answer it, they will likely answer it yes. They better answer it yes in order to say that they have some kind of claim, because the way you get a private right of action is by suffering a loss. And like I said, the original creditor already charged it off as a business loss with the appropriate party, the Internal Revenue Service. It's already recorded as a business loss. The contract's already fulfilled. Now, if they want to come after me or her for breach of contract, they would again have to prove that it's qualified. And again, their whole presumption assumption situation that implies everything is a contract is based on residency and United States citizenship, which are both, we know, now false. This is called walking them to the edge and letting them fall off the cliff onto their sword. And they're the ones that make the presumption in the record that you are a resident and demand a resident ID or driver's license. That presumption is there, and that's why they demand that. You must be a resident. People try to convince me of that all the time. No, I don't. No, I don't. What's your name? Well, first it starts out, let me see your ID. I don't have an ID. Well, actually I do, but it's homemade. Got as much validity as your state ID. I call it a bicycle driver's license. They look at it, they get a nice little chuckle. But well, what's your ID? What's your name? Well, I don't have one of those either. Well, everybody's got a name. No, only persons have names. See, the living soul is known as an adjective, and then you can define that living soul by a character trait or a personality trait. That's why it's known in person. But on the person or on the paper, the one that gives the authorized signature is the only one outside of person that can do so, and that's a living soul. It's not even a natural person. Even a natural person is merely a description of a living soul, just like man, animal, funny enough, and various many other things. Those are all nouns. Joyce is a resident in the state of Iowa. That's a particular phrase too. That's the federal territory within the exterior boundaries of the state of Iowa. The original creditor, they have to admit, because they give you letters that say the original creditor, and they've handed the collection responsibilities over to us, even though they already charged off the collection responsibilities to the proper collection authority. And then, of course, there is no signed contract by Joyce, and therefore private right of action doesn't exist. This should be marked yes, and all the others should be marked no. I assure you they will fail, or they will fail to even respond. When they fail to respond, it shows they are in default of having the proper evidence to bring before the court to prove their claim. Therefore, they've stated a claim upon which relief cannot be had. They cannot sue somebody in those courts unless they are a resident or they have a contract. Didn't happen. Sorry. They want to keep forcing us to do the paperwork. There's a counterclaim under 18 U.S.C. 1589 as the future threat. If you don't stop now, we're going to start out with a small claims to provide an estoppel for the rest of the cases that they want to try to hammer her with, or me with, or anybody else. Counterclaim of 18 U.S.C. 1589. Let's take a look at that next. And you guys stop me anytime you find anything that you have a question about. I'm gonna be up for hours.
So Keith, are the benefactor? Are we classified as a trustee, or is assumed to be one? Because that sounds
by
like
your signatory, that's what you're doing. You're not qualifying the signature by not knowing certain things, but that's still, guys, that's merely just a presumption. It would be an error still. You have to be competent. You have to have the knowledge, skills, abilities, other characteristics to fulfill the duties of a position. And if your position, even if it's some kind of employee, there are certain ethics that you have a duty to fulfill under the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the citizens thereof. If you don't know those personal things, those particular elements of law, the Constitution, the U.S. Code, the Code of Federal Regulations, the statutes, and all that apply to those citizens known as residents, then you're going around acting like a blind slave. You're using that state ID and that driver's license as said employee. Everything's a presumption. It's a legal fiction, presumed until rebutted otherwise. So let's say, go back to the 15 U.S.C. 1692, because again, it's all the judicial district, right? So let's talk about the Judicial Officer Department. And this is from the Postal Service. Again, the registered agent, about USPS.com, who judicial. And it says the Judicial Officer Department is a neutral, independent forum. Forum would be venue. Neutral, independent forum, independent from the administrative forum within the independent forum within the United States Postal Service forum, within the United States Postal Service forum, comprised of the judicial officer, the administrative law judges, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. So there's the contract that's presumed in the judicial office. That's why they got to come through the judicial district. But they're using administrative law judges and judicial officers. Okay, you see a problem there? When they're using the administrative law judges, they're using an administrative docket. But they're not issuing it to the judicial docket, which is the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals, Chairman Judge Alan R. Carmella. These people are appointed by the president. At the state level, and this is why, oops, I wasn't sharing my screen, was I? Somehow it did not. Oops. Okay, we are seeing this. Okay, judicial district. So the judicial officer department, why is it doing that? Did they change something? The Judicial Officer Department, like I said, is a neutral independent forum within the United States Postal Service. And we see the Postal Service up here as the registered agent. So they are the trustee. It's already assigned. The Postal Service is the trustee, comprised of the judicial officer, the administrative law judges, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. The Judicial Officer electronic filing system is where you can file a new case, ask to be added to an existing case, or work with cases in which you are already a party or representative, or work with cases in which you are already a party or representative. That would be that entire administrative docket where they have assumed you to be a party by name, address, and otherwise, using the Social Security number to generate a BL number or a PIN number to access the credit account to redirect it. Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals consists of Chairman Judge Alan R. Carmella. That's why I noticed him. Okay, so let's ask, share this stab and Ted, who appoints judicial officers in Iowa? The governor. So we're doing it at the state level for the state administrative services as a part of the administrative process. By instead of going through the courts, we're just giving a private notice of a tort claim through the mails. Does that make sense? The governor appoints the judicial officers, the attorney general, secretary of state, state registrar. I believe they're all those people get appointed by the governor, and they are working at the pleasure of the governor. You've heard me mention that phrase before. We're not traveling. We're in transition as tourists, going about at our pleasure, learning other cultures and educating other people in those cultures about our own cultures. That's just the extent of it. Has no commercial element whatsoever. Whereas as soon as you start entering these forms, they're known as battles of the form. So let's take a look. Let me turn this light on real quick, folks.
So then he's outsourcing, or the governor's outsourcing a lot of their job.
Okay. So let's clear this out, put us back up. So what do you think so far, guys? You guys tracking along with me?
So Keith, the governor is like outsourcing a lot of his jobs then, isn't he?
Well,
she.
Yeah, she's able to appoint certain people for delegated powers, but those delegated powers are supposed to be coming from the legislation or rulemaking sessions of Congress and not from state legislature. State legislature is only supposed to interpret, but what they've done is they've gone through a separate publishing company to implement things at state statute levels, like the traffic codes and probate codes and administrative codes. And those are merely just interpretive writings published through a publishing company that fits within their interpretation. And they're not allowed to do that. That's what the Chevron document, the Chevron doctrine is what the Supreme Court ruled on here about 2 weeks ago. I mentioned that not too long ago on something else. And what they did was they said that the administration doesn't have the power to delegate that which the federal government doesn't have the power to delegate themselves, and that is the interpretation. That's supposed to be done by Congress, the legislation of Congress, and they're set forth under, again, what I mentioned under 5 U.S.C. 301 departmental regulations. It mentions the plain writing in government documents, and it also mentions the minimum birth registration standards. They fail in both, in the misinterpretation of those elements, and they do it in all venues. They think that they're given the power to discern under their own interpretation. This is why I say case law isn't valid at all. Look at it. There's not one basis of law stated by those judges. It's all opinions, assenting and dissenting. They don't have the authority to make law. They don't have the authority to do anything but to weigh the balances of the interpretation as to the intent and the actual effect. They have a hard time with the intent. They're trying to use the effect as a lineation to a direct cause and saying it's because of you. That's not true. It's because of many things, mistakes, mutual mistakes on both sides. So, in my tort claim, we'll start out with that. I have to make sure that everybody understands that before the tort claim came, I asked about the original creditor. Okay. A creditor is one that's owed money, first and foremost. But when it comes to the creditor, as far as Capital One Bank N.A. in my companion situation, and in my situation is Black Hawk County Court, because they've taken certain data elements and claimed to be able to redirect them and access credits on credit on state business, because I gave them a state identification at some point in time. That's my mistake, and mutually in them receiving that information, they took it in good faith that I knew what I was doing. And therefore, they know what they're supposed to do. Resident. Yep, he checked it. United States citizen? Yep, he checked it. Okay, he's qualified. If you understand what's happening, if you mark not a United States citizen, not a resident, they have some other kind of work they got to fill out. They got some other kind of paperwork they got to give you or something. Otherwise, they're excluding you. And that goes against affirmative action of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you were fucking born here. So, the tax issue is what come up first because there's an automatic charge-off. HJR 1 Public Law, or 192 Public Law 7310. We have no way to actually pay the debt. We have a way to set it off. And that's what we're supposed to do. They charged it off. Now they're coming at us, and it's not us they can get payment from. It's from the entity, the legal entity, not me. There's a distinct difference. And what belongs to me is my real property. Part of that real property is the legal entity. So you want to come after the legal entity that has the ability to set things off, then you have to know how to set them off. The state gave me that person. Now I have personal jurisdiction, the certificate, the birth certificate, and I surrender it to the United States under their obligation and other securities of the United States, which includes all bonds. It's a bond, and it's got a treasury seal and the governor's seal, signed with the governor and the state registrar, in good faith, given to myself, one of the people. And I have receipts showing that they're issued by a commanding officer, the governor, the commander-in-chief. That shall be that the spoliated owner may use to obtain indemnity. So I hand it over to their commanding officers. The governor works at the pleasure of the president. So I get his instrument, I hand it off to the president. So we notice the president. Everybody down the line, both state and federal, and that's why I sent out all those notices. So I sent the tort claim to the governor, and I sent a notice to the president that I sent a tort claim to the governor. And that's the notice that everybody else got. In the tort claim to the governor, I gave the birth certificate standards, my conclusion rules and all that I've showed you before. It's on the community page. It's the top post on the community page here on El Perro. And so when it came to the tax issue, along with the tort claim, I filed a 3949A information referral with the IRS as it relates to the unknown conversion of the last name to a firm name and the Social Security number for an obligor number. And then I filed a 13909 tax-exempt organization complaint referral because it was Dreyer Andrea, the judicial officer that caused issues through a jury summons without a waiver of personal jurisdiction, never got receivership, and then supposedly withdrew the bond. I don't think they ever did. And then issued a new summons, again without a waiver of personal jurisdiction, that I then overwrote and then signed with a qualified restricted endorsement of Benefactor, letting her know and expressing the trust and giving her many notes. And I've got that in here as well. All pieces of evidence that I'm sharing with all of them. That any competent man with the knowledge, skills, abilities, and characteristics to fulfill the duties of his position means he should at least know this stuff. This is all simple common sense stuff, particularly the birth certificate standards that are impossible at birth. You cannot be a United States citizen first and foremost. You cannot be the business. It is a representative capacity of the living soul restricted to a person in form, personification. That's all it is. So that was to report her and her inability to accept the correction of the record, because she then issued a letter through the mail saying that costs were taxed to the defendant. So they got two information referrals there. Along with those, and I want to remind everybody here, before I go any further, those two tax information forms, 3949A and the 13909, those go to different addresses. One goes to the P.O. Box at Ogden, Utah, and the other one goes to the TEGE classification with a mail code to the Commerce Street in Dallas, Texas.
I got a question about that.
Sure.
Aren't they, by duty as fiduciaries, responsible to, let's say one were to send both documents to the same address, therefore send on the one document to the other address? I mean, is that not their duty to do that?
Well, yeah, it can be. You know, if you understand how the franking privileges in the mail system all that works, yeah, that's certified mail.
No. I'm saying if I send both documents to the one address in Ogden, Utah, isn't it their duty as fiduciaries to say, oh, he sent this document to the wrong address, I'm going to forward it on to our second office in, you know, whatever the other address was that you just mentioned?
Yeah, they should, in the discretion of expense, just send it on, because they, like I just mentioned, they do have that franking privilege. But I get what you're saying. A lot of times they just send it back, return to sender, because you evidently didn't address it right. Come on, let's get over the small ideas and just forward it, because you know who it goes to, and that's part of your public service as a public trust. You have the knowledge, abilities, skills, and all that to fulfill that position. So just act like it.
Well, does that brings up, if it's true, that thing that I see a lot of, notice to agent, notice to principal, and vice versa.
Right. So let's pull up so everybody can see it. Federal Tort Claims Form. And they call it claim for damage, injury, or death. So let's take a look here. And I'll blow this up a little bit. So we've got claim for damage, injury, or death. Please read carefully the instructions on the reverse side and supply information requested on both sides of this form. Use additional sheets if necessary. See reverse side for additional instructions. And then it's got an OMB form. So it's a valid form. Submit to appropriate federal agency. Name, address of claimant, and claimant's personal representative, if any. See instructions on reverse. Number, street, city, state, and zip. Okay. Name, address of claimant and claimant's personal representative, if any. So grammatically, it's Keith Orland, :stop, Little, :stop. And that is a different style and a different expression of the moniker or nom de guerre that they would like to call it. And it's concise grammar in concise English that distinguishes the family name from the given names in grammatical style by using those hyphens. It's telling you stop. And there is a disconnection here. This is separate and distinct from the surname Little. And it says type of employment, military or civilian. I didn't mark anything. I'm unemployed. I'm not employable. Date of birth, I didn't mark anything. I don't know the date that they call birth. I know the day I was born on, and this birth certificate I have has a day that it was signed by a doctor, and it has a day that it was received by the registrar. It doesn't say birth date on it. Marital status, I'm not married. I have a covenant in wedlock. Date and day of accident, multiple, see attached. And the attached is the financial index, including all 94 cases. Okay? Time, AM or PM, all times in the day. Again, see date and day of accident. And notice they call it an accident. Okay? So, at the federal level, 49 CFR 387.5 says accident. Accident includes continuous or repeated exposure to the same conditions resulting in public liability. Let that sink in, guys. It's always the public that's going to claim the loss because they're the ones claiming a liability, which the insured neither expected nor intended. Under Social Security, you are insured one way or another, Part B or Part A. It is either health care insurance or life insurance, one or the other. So let's go back to the form. Basis of claim. Unknown conversions without prior consideration, inherently a misidentification by said unknown conversion. These conversions are seemingly by issue of the court clerk of Black Hawk County District Court. So I'm naming it as an issue. And though it is by seemingly that of the court clerk, it is still just mutual mistakes. I'm still pointing to the issue. Property damage. Name and address of owner if other than claimant. Briefly describe the property, nature, and extent of the damage and location of where the property may be inspected. Monies paid under misidentification. Financial index attached with amounts paid and those yet due. Black Hawk County Court, Dreyer, Andrea, and all others. And this is where I referred to multiple, see attached, because I'm referring to the one that I'm including in here, which was the failure to appear for jury duty that Dreyer, Andrea, issued a $350 bench warrant for, supposedly withdrew it, despite the fact that they found no bond, there was no long title, there were no charges, there were no finances, there was no description, and yet she issued that bench warrant and then supposedly withdrew it and then reissued the summons, and again failed to favor or send a waiver of personal jurisdiction. So upon my return response, expressing the trust in my capacity in that trust that these matters were settled as far as I was concerned, she then issued a dismissal and then a letter saying costs are taxed to the defendant. And that's why I'm handing it over to the IRS in a couple of information referrals. She is not allowed to misidentify me. My yay is my yay, my nay is my nay. You cannot accept that there's a misidentification or an error in the record and then say you can adjudicate it anyway, particularly when it creates an impossibility. It fails a proper cause of action to have effect. Next, it goes on to personal injury, wrongful death. And again, stop me anytime, guys. I'm not watching the chat or anything at this point, but feel free to comment in the chat all you want. I'll be coming back to it, and if there's anything I need to highlight, I will. So it says personal injury, wrongful death. Personal injury / wrongful death. State the nature and extent of each injury or cause of death, which forms the basis of the claim. If other than claimant, state the name of the injured person or decedent. So a person is of like kind as the decedent. They're telling you in plain writing, you have to make the claim. Which one are you going to claim? Are you going to claim the claimant with a representative known as an injured person, which causes harm, damage, or loss to yourself, as well as the United States? It says undisclosed material fact evidencing conversions of identification. Misidentification in all incidents and events affecting all real and personal effects encompassing the entire estate. : stop. The misidentification has, does, and continues to cause harm, loss, damage, and injury. And then witnesses. Given name, Keith, hyphen, or : stop. Family name, comma, Little, : stop. Benefactor, : stop. Legal name, comma, Keith Little. So I've named both myself and the person by its known legal name. Its known legal name, and I am the benefactor that gives to the beneficiary, known as Keith Little, by its legal name. Then, of course, the address, so you put your address in there. And folks, here I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter. You can go ahead and put put brackets around your zip code if you want, and put Keith, benefactor, care of Keith Little, legal entity, whatever, expressing United States of America. Go outside the bounds of that national address format if you want to express outside the bounds of that contract. That's still a contract form, and it presumes a performance. Show them that you're not performance. It's outside of their normal forms. Then it says property damage, $20,000 of credit And this is according to the financial index of all of the debt posed against the estate in administration by the courts. And then $10 million for personal injury, $10 million on credit. And that's kind of small because, like I said, 94 cases, each one of them is a violation. And we're talking about a judicial district. And so each one of those violations in that judicial district has a $2 million fidelity payout for each violation. That's a minimum of 94 violations times $2 million. I think 10 million is pretty easy and lenient. For a total of $10,020,000. And I just found an error on this, so I've got to make a note of it.
Don't worry, they make a lot of errors.
Oh yeah, I'll just have to write them a little letter and communicate that I noticed that error. It needs to be give me a leave of communication to resend in corrected form, whatever. Anyway, you're already familiar with then the birth certificate standards that I read off. And then, of course, in that I gave them the letter, a copy of the letter from the district court stating that the court reviewed this case on December 10th, 2023. The jury clerk informed the court that defendant was rescheduled for jury duty on December 5th, 2023, but was not needed for service on a jury on that date. These contempt of court proceedings are dismissed. So she didn't dismiss it by recognizing the lack of personal jurisdiction. She tried saying that they still had personal jurisdiction, I just wasn't needed. Okay? This is buffoonery. This is blatant inability to accept a simple mistake, eat your dirt about it, and dismiss it for the proper course of action. Instead, she dismissed it and then charged the defendant. All costs are taxed to the defendant. If the charges were dismissed, then why are the taxes charged to the defendant at a cost? Remember the finances? I did a video a while back on that where we looked it up online and I showed you it had no bond found, no long title, no charges, and no this, no that, and yet she issued a bond, a bench warrant in the bond of $350, issued it through the clerk, or ordered the bond that issued through the clerk, and then was held by the sheriff. You just need to admit your mistake. They refuse to do it. Then I've got in here the copy of the financial index, the first page of it anyway, that I got from these courts 8 years ago. And it is slightly different. Let me check before I open up and say anything. Yeah, it is slightly different. And I'm going to show you how. And this is what they're trying to do. And I talked to Brittany down at the Black Hawk County Court yesterday. I got quite animated with her, of course. There comes a point where I no longer give a fuck. So, remember I showed you on the last, on the one I've got that I got a picture of and I show all the time. I show that under last/firm, they actually filled in the parameter with the firm name, not the last name. And they actually filled in the obligor number with the social security number without dashes. Now, Brittany told me yesterday that they do that to generate what's known as a BL number. Now, I found it interesting, and it rung the bell in my head right away when she told me that the BL number is what is generated by converting the Social Security number. They use the Social Security number to generate a BL number, which is a PIN number that is required in order to allow the credits to be transferred. So that's the property that they're transferring, is the credits. Okay? The ones I received here recently, they leave that out. It doesn't have the name or the obligor number. And notice it doesn't say obligor number. Oh, yeah, it just says obligor on that one too. But notice here, see, now you can't distinguish whether the obligor is identified by a number or not, or whether it's identified by a last name or a firm name. They no longer put that on there. So, this is a credit device. Understand the term credit card means any card, plate, coupon book, or other credit device, even if it's a negotiable instrument, whether it be in the form of a contract or a credit application or other type of contract, used to obtain money. Interesting. You mean I can use credit to obtain money? Can I use money to obtain credit? Yes, that's in fact what happens when you deposit money into a bank. They create an electronic credit to the account. And you can draw it out as money, but you can also use it as a credit and transfer it electronically. So let's think about the next thing. You guys got any questions on that yet?
No questions on that one.
Okay, let me pull everybody back up here. And I dropped the link again for anybody who wants to join the panel here. We lost Dino. I don't know if he's got a bad signal or what sometimes, but so anyway, what I've got here now is a notice. The notice that I sent out to everybody, all those multiple agencies, federal and state levels, aside from the tort claim and the 2 information referrals to the IRS, I sent out another 30 notices. And of course, it's on my letterhead. It's on my letterhead. It's simple. It doesn't have to be anything fantastic or anything. But it's much like a copyright claim. Nobody else should be able to reproduce this. And it's got enumerations on it according to my own purposes. That number is an epoch number. That number there is another epoch number. And it's the time of the event, the time that I created this document or this notice. And it says, special presentment under common law seeking equity. And I made a little note there in parentheses, square brackets, cover sheet. Because it's just a cover sheet notice to everybody else's information that I gave them along with that notice. So they too could see what's going on. This serves as notice of misidentification and remedy by correction and reversion of interest by merger of estate matters with private trust. Transfer of title with fidelity. And this is where I talk about the expenses incidental to transfer of title to the agency, to the United States, and to the United States Postal Service. That's where I believe that stuff is supposed to be had. They're the ones that make that judicial determination. They're the ones that their capital is the equity of the government of the United States. Where does the government of the United States get its equity if not off the sweat equity labor of each and every one of us, where we too have a portion of equity in that, which tends to be much larger than anybody else's as a real party in interest. Our intent is to correct pieces of information in records as they relate to misidentification in administration and now require reconciliation by full acquittance and discharge. The tort claim is only seeking the return of what was errantly entered in safe harbor exceptions and gave no equal considerations. If after all creditors are made whole and accounts are zeroed out, there is any remainder is directed as a transfer of assets in the form of advance deposit credits upon deposit with the United States Postal Service. That's what's going to back the title. It's going to have an advanced special direct deposit account for all those credits to be transferred in. That title is under the Keith Orland Little Estate and Trust. That's the trust account. That's where all the other trusts start emanating from, the revocable trusts and all that, to do business as or this, or which you can have multiples of if that's what you want to do. Or placing property in the trust and enumerating it. That's, what do you think a VIN number is? Why do you think classic car collectors name their cars? Because it no longer matters by the number. They get to name it. It gets an exception for being a classic. It's antique. Yeah, in the Keith Orland Little Estate and Trust account, which is already established, folks. I've already got the MID and CRID numbers for the Keith Orland Little Estate and Trust account. It's already established. That contract is already there, just sitting there waiting to be funded. This will include accounts that established the state's vital statistics jurisdiction and all subsequent accounts of agencies and departments after such establishment. That's that birth certificate chart that we showed you for the vital statistics. Then it starts out with mom and the doctor, and then they go to a hospital, and it goes to the birth clerk and the OPD and the pediatrician and this and that. And mom signs as an informant to the birth clerk, who then registers it in the electronic birth registry. And Health and Human Services is the one that receives that. And that's the establishment of an estate as a public entity in a probate administration capacity, because they take upon the obligation or undertake the obligation of a burial trust in case you die while in their custody. Safe harbor exception. Yep. Safe harbor exception. And those credits are established by you. The administration of these accounts is constitutionally void and lacks power to administrate a public entity that suffers fatality due to certain impossibilities. Very plain writing. It's going to be hard for them to beat it. This is a matter of due process of providing a remedy where there is an impossibility. This is why I mentioned the doctrine of necessity, which allows you to create a law where there isn't a law to make something allowable. And that doctrine of necessity is perpetrated through safe harbor exceptions, which allow for anti-kickback statutes not to be enforced because of the necessity of making such laws. So despite the government getting paid emoluments for doing what they do, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But you can teach them. Remember, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you teach him for a lifetime. He can feed himself. It seems that the benefactor has been included and led to believe he was required to do many things that are only applicable to public entities doing business. As the parties in public service, which is a public trust, you are hereby noticed by the obligee of the obligation of due process, which is a commitment to legality. You don't have the authority in your administrative capacity to keep administrating an estate of somebody who's in fact alive. All real and personal effects encompass my estate. And by you trying to administrate anything that carries my name would be a violation of that. So long as I know how to stand up and do that stuff myself and enforce it through this stuff, you can't use that Constitution against me, and I'm not using it against you. I'm referencing it, showing where it binds certain people and binds certain persons, and those bindings are to different aspects. As a 14th Amendment citizen, you are bound to speak in certain grammars. As one of the people, you are bound by plain writing and common parlance that if you know if there's something wrong, you're supposed to speak up and say something. I don't know a man that doesn't know any better than let another man tell him what to do. Why would you do that? Aren't you a big boy? Anyway, full colon stop. As the parties in public service, the legality is dependent upon your integrity and the integrity of the record. Therefore, if I give you notice that there's an error in the record, and you, in your public service, having an ethical duty of care to make sure that the record maintains its integrity, knowing that it doesn't, continues on in the administration of those things, those matters, those events, you have breached your duty of care. That is an obligation of public service. Basic obligation of public service is a public trust. And just part of that characteristic is your ethics and morals. That's your obligation. And in like kind, again, that's for those people in those public offices and agents that are acting in that personification. You too, myself and I, and John and everybody in that living soul capacity, we have a similar like obligation. It is with each other to owe no man anything. And when you do see something wrong, which would include somebody saying this man owes him, it's as simple as that. How does he owe you? Doesn't seem to me like he's got a contract with you. Show me the contract. The transfer of title will be with expenses incidental to transfer to the agency known as the Health and Human Services for their duties of the Estate Recovery Program. transfer to the United States to clear and settle all accounts, and transfer to the United States Postal Service as a matter of international security. Now it's secured in the proper place. In my comprehension, this is the way I'm moving forward. This is my attempt. So we see the transfer of title be expenses incidental to transfer of agency known as the Health and Human Services and their duties of the Estate Recovery Program. Now, these people are going to try to tell me, I guarantee you, because this is what Brittany, the gal down at the courthouse yesterday that I spoke to at the finances, in regards to the financial index and the firm name and all that, she told me, well, the estate isn't created until somebody has died and passed away, until there's a deceased. Oh no. Let's take a look at that. This is where they're wrong, and this is why they have no legal license to give advice or pose that they know the law, and in that have some kind of excuse to shirk their duty of care. I'm telling you, Brittany, you are wrong. So let's take a look. I've got another thing. Remember I talked earlier about cause and effect. You can't take any effect and draw a line back and say, well, this is the cause. If you don't have a chain of title, if there's something missing. So if you're missing a contract and a resident, and you're trying to point to a resident and say that they owe you a debt, you're implying that there's a contract with you somewhere, that they contracted into debt with you, and that somehow they could do that because they identified them. That's that identification. For trading with an enemy. They identified you in good faith and said that, yeah, I'm a resident. It's all false. Greetings, JG. How you doing tonight, brother?
Hey, Keith, what up, man? I was going to ask you if I could talk to you for a few minutes when the stream's done.
Sure.
All right, I appreciate it.
You bet. So let me get to my other panel here again. Okay, this is some notes I've drawn up as it relates to what I'm doing, both for myself and my companion. And this is all from Black's Law 4th. And I'm just going to read it to you. Effects. Personal estate or property. See Johnson versus Olson, 92 KAN 819 142 P. Movable or chattel property. Chattel property is all that documentation. And in it, it is movable itself. But in that chattel property, it is a collateral. In other words, it's kind of like an equalization. It's saying there's something beside it. And that's what it's correlating. The chattel property is a correlation, a collateralization of something else that is movable, something tangible of any kind. Importers and exporters, insurance, In this sense, the term is more comprehensive than the word goods, as including fixtures and chooses in action. Chooses in action. Private right of action. He doesn't have any choice about it. He's got to have a private right of action, and he's got to do it through the judicial district. In that, he's got to have a contract, or it's got to be against a resident. Many times both. They don't have those elements, folks. Which goods will not include? Which goods will not include? This is why they changed Article 48 CFR 52.212-5. It used to say contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes and executive orders, hyphen commercial items and commercial goods. Now I believe it says commercial items and commercial products. I'm not sure. There is a distinct difference now, but they're changing it. And it's because of this kind of stuff. The grammar has got to be specific. Also, every kind of property, real and personal. So let's talk about this. Personal. Like I said earlier, there's a personification because the person itself in all senses, in this sense, but in all senses, the person is a fiction. So relative to personal being fictional, what they're talking about is something that is real or not real, which is tangible or intangible, tangible or not tangible, which would be things like thoughts, ideas, imaginations. Personal property, goods, worldly substance. If the term is used simpliciter, as in a gift of all my effects, it will carry the whole personal estate, unless an intention appears to the contrary. So this is talking about writing out your will versus maybe the living will. Carry out the whole personal estate unless an intention appears to the contrary. My intention in this living will, even though it's a will of my whole personal estate, it's intended to limit, contrary to the whole, a portion of the estate, and a portion of that estate would be my health care concerns if I become mentally or physically incompetent. The meaning of the term is determined by the context and surrounding circumstances, such as in the circumstances of a living will. The conditional contradiction would be in a living will, a power of attorney is assigned to a portion of the estate and not the whole estate. A truck is transferred to grandson. A power of attorney is created again, and it appears to contradict the whole estate, wherein grandpa isn't executing his whole estate to his grandson, but a portion of it through a trustee that will hold that property until the grandson is old enough to receive it. The grandson is not due the whole estate. No one really is. It's up to grandpa or the testator. The meaning of the term is determined by the context and surrounding circumstances. The words real and personal effects will embrace the whole estate. So let's go to the effect. Like I said, the effect follows the cause. This is Latin, effectus sequitur causam. The effect is a sequitur from the cause. There has to be a cause first. Personal property, goods, and worldly substances. If the term is used simpliciter, as in a gift of all my effects, it will carry the whole personal estate. I don't know why I said that. Maybe I need to relook that up, and maybe I just copy-pasted wrong. Because we're just reading the same thing again. Yeah. Good thing I reread this stuff. So, effectus sequitur causam, the effect follows the cause. The next one is efficient cause. You know everybody wants to be efficient. Isn't that the dogmatic purview of being profitable, is you have to be efficient? So, let's look what efficient cause is. It says the working cause. that cause which produces effects or results. So if I take the birth certificate standards as the efficient cause where all of these effects came from, because without that, none of this would be happening. Presumably. There has to be some kind of communication. That communication has to be in some kind of contractual form. And in that contractual form, it has to be covered under a trust of some sort. And therefore, it's just merely recognize the contract terms and conditions and placing yourself within the trust form appropriately to be equally considered for the benefits in the exchange. They require your data elements. Make sure they're worth it. That's all it is. And it says an intervening cause which produces results which would not have come to pass except for its interposition. Remember that imposition hearing or a disposition hearing? Things like that. That's what it is. See, there's an interposition that shouldn't be there. Mom shouldn't have been entered into a spell of illness where a record was created and a birth nativity created and all this government document that is supposed to be under plain writing. And I have a hard time understanding or comprehending why it is I'm the only one that sees this impossibility and is squawking about it. And everybody else is looking at me like I'm the insane one. Look at it all you want. I urge you to share it with everybody. Every legal guru you know, every attorney you know, no matter how many years. I prefer the guys and gals that have many decades. The more, the better. I want to know who can defeat the birth certificate standards rebuttal that I put out in my community page. The last post, the top post. If you can beat it, let me know. Plain writing in government documents, minimum birth registration requirements, or standards, call for it must be registered in the United States. Fail. No birth registration in the United States. Doesn't exist. What was the other one? Was a citizen or national of the United States at birth. Knowing that United States citizen means a United States national, and United States national means a United States business. And that a United States business means a United States citizen. Therefore, too, a United States citizen, as it means a United States national, and United States national means a United States citizen, it too means a United States citizen is a United States business, and so too is a United States national, a United States business. They are synonymously used as a similar, like kind status of doing trade or business, known as intercoursing, interpositioning. So let's continue reading. And for which, therefore, the person who set in motion the original chain of causes is not responsible. So mom's not responsible for the enumeration at birth, wherein the Social Security number was assigned. And I'm not responsible for filling out the SS5 application. That created all those other causes. We were both indoctrinated. It's a matter of recognizing that, studying to shew thyself worthy and approved, rightly dividing the word of truth, not being ashamed, boldly speaking as we ought to, by repentance and forgiveness. It says the cause which originates and sets in motion the dominating agency that necessarily proceeds through other causes are mere instruments or vehicles in a natural line of causation to the result. The dominating agency, Health and Human Services, as I explained, that necessarily proceeds through other causes as mere instruments or vehicles in the natural line of causation to result. Remember that chart and all of those other offices and agencies: Social Security, driver's license, Department of Motor Vehicle, Tax Authority, IRS, voter registration, all of that. You know, it's a matter of I don't know how that happened. So, oops. The cause of an injury to which legal liability attaches. And remember that UCC 3-402, wherein it says the authorized representative giving an unambiguous signature on the instrument is therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument. And if that cause of an injury to which legal liability attaches is that public liability, it's an accident. We have to learn how to make these claims as accidents in forgiveness and repentance, and educating others about our own accidents in what we were doing by studying to show ourselves worthy and approved and show where the liability attached. Well, it attached when I signed my signature and somebody else interpreted it that I was supposed to be held liable. My apologies. I repent. I will never do it again. From here on out, I will rightly express the trust, its terms, and my position in it as I comprehend or understand my ethical and moral duties to myself and each other. However you want to word it, it's just simple comprehension of being rightly just instead of unjust enrichment. The proximate cause, the phrase is practically synonymous with procuring cause, and efficient intervening cause. Efficient intervening cause. Did they inject mom with an epidural in labor pains, giving birth in a spell of illness into her veins, intervening? One not produced by a wrongful act or omission, but independent of it, and adequate to bring the injurious results. It wasn't the fact that mom went into labor, which is a duty of care that anybody rightly has, that if you see a woman bearing her children, you don't have to be a doctor. That's a natural event, and you're by duty supposed to step up and help out if you can. It is completely comprehensible, however, that many people don't understand this and are scared of it and will walk away. However, our natural duty is inherently, as both men and women, whether we have children or not, is to do everything we can in service of the Lord and His children. That is the inheritance of the Lord, in my opinion, of course. So, the efficient intervening cause, one not produced by a wrongful act or omission, but independent of it, the signatures that qualified the spell of illness. Enumeration at birth, making it, creating a record based on an impossibility. So the basis is a sand beach and it washes away when you expose it for what it is. And adequate to bring the injurious results. Adequate to bring the injurious results because everybody was induced in unconscionable contracts from the beginning and not responsible. Even though I was the one that set in motion the original chain of causes of action, I am not responsible because I admit the errors of my ways. It was an accident. I didn't mean to do that. That was not my intent. Remember the definition of accident? Continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions that result in public liability that the insured never expected nor intended. A new and independent force which breaks causal connection between original wrong and injury. A new and independent force which breaks causal connection between original wrong and injury. Behold, I make all things new. Repent and do not sin no more. That's all we're doing is setting forth the record, correcting a record that we set forth in motion in error. In that, it's a mutual mistake because they're continuing to make those mistakes. And I'll tell you again, that this Brittany gal that I spoke to yesterday, she even admitted she used to be a debt collector. She tried to convince me that my companion does owe that debt. I asked her if she was willing to get on the stand and testify to that as a first-hand witness. She says she owes the debt. Yes. She's sure cocked believed in that false testimony that my companion owes a debt somehow, particularly to a fictional corporate entity, public or private. This is all facetious bullshit that we've been induced to through a public education system that doesn't qualify us for the actual merits. The merits, the spiritual credits. You want to talk about credits? That's where those credits are. Let me pull something else up. And again, guys, go ahead and speak. Let me know what's on your mind. Come on. Sorry, guys. Okay. Drop this again. Now, what I'm going to show you here, I hope will show you something that you really need to start thinking about when these people are talking about credits, and what you're doing is filling out a credit application. So think about it specifically in terms of a credit application, obviously, because of the term credit. I believe this is. Oh, maybe not. I'll have to find out where I posted it. I'll be darned. I'll have to keep looking. Oh, here's an interesting one, guys. The director may delegate authority to officials of the state and agency heads. This is the vehicle assignment guidelines. Okay, in order for them to have a vehicle assignment vehicle assignment, that's your certificate of title. That's an assignment. So when they supposedly assign that vehicle to you, the director may delegate authority to officials of the state and agency heads for the use of private vehicles. So they're letting you know what's happening is that they understand that there's a use of a private vehicle. What are you going to do about it? There's other elements, and they tell you on state business. This is why they say, well, it's not a motor vehicle unless it's being used for commerce, right? Use of private vehicles on state business. What about driver? Well, that's in the performance of commercial activity. You have to understand how these things all interplay, and that certificate of title is false. In order to undertake that obligation of a motor vehicle operator's lease, you have to have given a handwritten statement of intent under this vehicle assignment, where the state is going to assign you that vehicle after you pledge it to them as security property for going forth and using it at least 50% of its use for the performance of your trade or business, which is the performance of the functions of public office. You don't have a public office, do you guys? Did you take an oath? You have to have an oath of office to have a motor vehicle lease program set up so that you can use your private vehicle on state business, because you're a state employee working for the state, appointed, assigned, elected, otherwise employed by the state. Why are you carrying an employee ID without an oath of office, going around flashing your commercial ID card saying, yeah, I'm in commerce, yeah, I'm a resident, yeah, I'm a United States citizen? You're screwing yourself. Does that make sense, guys? I mean, I'm not insane, am I? I'll take that as a no. So, the last thing I want to close out with is scripture. Let me double check here. I might have something else I wanted to bring up. I got to double check here. Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. Let's take a look at this here real quick. Remember, I was talking about that federal territory within the external boundaries of the state is what they use to define in the state, and this is relative to 18 U.S.C. 789, 911, and 912 as it relates to resident. No person shall reside within the zone except federal, state, or municipal officers or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. Okay, so remember that one. That's 19 U.S. Code 81, lowercase o. I don't mention that in this stuff here yet. It will get mentioned, I'm sure, eventually with somebody sooner or later along these lines. But what we're talking about is Joyce of the family Schmidt. Colon stops. You see them there. It's just separations. Witness. She's not a plaintiff. She's not a defendant. Federal rules of civil procedure. We're not bringing this as a matter of civil procedure. We're bringing this as a matter of a tort claim outside of the jurisdiction of the civil courts. Because it may be have equitable remedies, but those equitable remedies are no longer just. Joyce is retired and disabled, and I resigned a number of years ago, and there is no activity on those records. The records will reflect that. The docket number, which they're claiming $4,704.74 or some shit, and that's the accused. See, we're not making accusations against anybody for doing anything wrong. We're accusing the record for being in error. Failure to state a claim upon which relief can be had. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 12b-6. Failure of jurisdiction in all parts. Subject matter, territorial subject matter, and personal jurisdiction. If they don't have territorial jurisdiction because there is no resident, they fail territorial jurisdiction in the state. If there's no subject matter contract rising a tax or insurance issue, costs and expense, levies, taxes, liabilities, then they don't have subject matter. If the person and the foundation of that person is created in an impossibility, and that impossibility prevents them from contracting in the capacity presumed, then the doctrine of necessity and the safe harbor exceptions allow for a way out. That is the creation of one's own remedy, known as private relief law. Maybe we'll go ahead and talk about that before we go into the scriptures. So then I've got to note citizen and use status in air. Remember, I showed you 48 CFR 1652-370, use of the matrix as it relates to healthcare, health and human services, healthcare services. She's disabled. I'm assuming that they would classify myself as disabled as well, having lung cancer. Not healed yet, not cured yet, working on it, still alive, still breathing, still getting better in my opinion. Records will agree with that opinion. 48 CFR 2152-370, use of the matrix, again according to the use status. Retired. Under the contract, which was a federal contract as a state educator, and using federal employee insurances, such as federal life insurance. No longer in residency of United States citizenship. You guys understand the thing about walking on water has to do with faith. And now that you've worked for this Caesar and you give back to Caesar, it means you give back his vessel. You can now walk on water in faith. You are a leader. Study to shew thyself worthy to prove, not being ashamed to rightly divide the word of truth. Isaiah 54, let no tongue prosper, or no tongue shall prosper against you. You shall rise up and condemn any judgment. This is the inheritance of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me. So in whatever your task, work heartily as unto the Lord, not men, knowing that it is from the Lord that the inheritance is your reward. It's his inheritance. So what was I going to talk about here? Oh yeah, we want to go into the 18 U.S.C. 789, 911, and 912 first. And I'm just going to run over these. U.S. Code. Special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States defined. The term special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States as used in this title includes. So it's limiting it to anything but this. And that maritime territorial jurisdiction is the high seas. Any other waters within the admiralty and maritime jurisdiction of the United States. That's all the inland waters and 200 miles out of the coast. And out of the jurisdiction of any particular state and any vessel belonging in whole or in part to the United States or any citizen thereof, meaning business thereof, or to any corporation created by or under the laws of the United States. See, they are not your creator. You do not belong in that vessel. You have a vessel that can walk on water. It's known as a vassal. You ever taken a baby that's first born and given him his float test, him or her his float test? Their vassal will automatically float. So take up your due responsibilities and bring that child up in the ways of the Lord and teach him how to walk on land and water. You don't need King Caesar's vessel. Or any state, territory, district, or possession thereof, when such vessel is within the admiralty and maritime jurisdiction of the United States and out of the jurisdiction of any particular state. Now remember, folks, I talked to you about the sovereignty of the United States. How can the United States have sovereignty if the state ceded their jurisdiction to the United States, and the United States is the debtor, and the creditor is the one that is owed? So the United States is located in Washington, D.C., and again, remember, there's no birth registration there either. And Washington, D.C. has no statehood. How does the United States, a fictional entity, and I'll have to make a Freedom of Information request upon the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, to show me on their maps exactly pinpoint where the United States is located. I would expect to see either it encompassing the entire bounds of Washington, D.C., or a particular spot within Washington, D.C., perhaps maybe the capital itself. I don't know. I wouldn't expect it to be the prison. But you never know. So let's look at the next one, 18 U.S.C. 8. Well, let's continue with this first, because it says any vessel registered, licensed, or enrolled under the laws of the United States. The birth registration, minimum birth registration standards under the laws of the United States, wherein that birth is registered or filed or whatever, I don't know. I do know it was received by the registrar, who copied that abstract form onto a bonded piece of paper in the form of bond and fixed upon it a seal and impressed upon it a seal by the governor. And being on a voyage upon the waters of any of the Great Lakes or any waters connecting them, or upon the St. Lawrence River, where the same constitutes the international boundary line. Any lands reserved or acquired for the use of the United States and under the exclusive or concurrent jurisdiction thereof, or any place purchased or otherwise acquired by the United States by consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of a fort, magazine, arsenal, dockyard, or other needful building. I got to ask you folks, is your home a needful place for building? Why are you being considered a tenant? A tenant in lieu of the commanding officer that is supposed to man the post. And why is it you're taking upon that military post instead of going out upon your highly educated years of high school with that diploma in the proper position as a chaplain, diplomatically traveling and ministering the word of the gospel as a prophet unto the nations, as you were so ordained by God? See the differences? For the erection of a fort, magazine, arsenal, dockyard, or other needful building. And that, folks, is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Any island, rock, or key containing deposits of guano, which may, at the discretion of the President, be considered as appertaining to the United States. Again, if the United States is located in Washington, D.C., I want to see those islands, rocks, and keys containing deposits of guano in the United States. Any aircraft belonging in whole or in part to the United States or any citizen thereof, or to any corporation created by or under the laws of the United States or any state, territory, district, or possession thereof, including that judicial district, while such aircraft is in flight over high seas or over any other waters within the admiralty and maritime jurisdiction of the United States and out of the jurisdiction of any, all pretty much the same legalese, Babylonian style text. So let's continue on to the next one then, that 18 U.S.C. 8, obligations and other securities of the United States, defined, includes all bonds. Let's stop there. So this bond I have in my hand is an obligation or other security of the United States. So what are the obligations of the United States? Do you know? Hello, JG, do you know? No? Well, just like women and children, they expect daddy to protect them, right? Provide for them. You know, like the domestic tranquility, general welfare, national security. I mean, it is a national security issue. Department of Defense, as it relates to national defense, domestic security, and general welfare. You want to keep it peaceful. You don't want people rising up in arms. So let's continue on. It says certificates of indebtedness, national bank currency, Federal Reserve notes, Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons. Remember those bills when they say a payment coupon? Detach this payment coupon. United States notes, Treasury notes, gold certificates, silver certificates, fractional certificates, or fractional notes, certificates of deposits, bills, checks, or drafts. Somebody gives you a check? Do you have to deposit with the bank? Or is it an obligation of the United States or other security? Can you take it to the Treasury instead of the Federal Reserve Bank or to the local credit union or your local labor bank or whatever? Or drafts for money. Drafts for money. Remember that credit card means any card, plate, coupon device, coupon book, or other credit device used to obtain. So that credit device could be an instrumental vehicle used to draft a note or draft an order or draw an order or draw a note. Drawn by or upon authorized officers of the United States. By or upon. So if you're going to draw upon an officer of the United States and he's the trustee, express it. Then it's got this, my favorite little plain writing language sentence form or portion of sentence structure here. Stamps and other representatives of value of whatever denomination. Took away your name and gave you a number, folks. Denomination. Took away the name and gave you a number. And you've memorized that number, and you memorized your address, and you memorized your phone number. You memorize all kinds of numbers, folks. And you claim the name. Like I said, I don't have a name. Well, everybody's got a name. No, they don't. Issued under any act of Congress and canceled United States stamps. And canceled United States stamps. Why do you suppose that there's still an obligation or other security of the United States as a canceled United States stamp? Those canceled United States stamps, folks, create a philatelic value within a collector's society of such stamps that hold a certain market value for the Postal Service, who holds the Real Estate Investment Trust, not the United States. The United States is bankrupt. So let's go to the next one. United States Code 9, vessel of the United States defined. The term vessel of the United States, as used in this title, means a vessel belonging in whole or in part to the United States or any citizen thereof, or any corporation created by or under the laws of the United States or of any state, territory, district, or possession thereof. So the United States citizen or state resident, either one, both in one, as they are a dual citizenship, are both implying a vessel of the United States. As an obligation or other security of the United States in special maritime territorial jurisdiction. And so let's take a look at 18 U.S.C. 911. Citizen of the United States. Now that you know what a United States business means, a United States citizen. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title or imposed or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. You're committing a criminal offense under the U.S. Code, folks. 911! 911! Crying wolf. Willfully representing yourself to be a citizen of the United States by carrying a state ID as a resident, implying the exact same thing. (912) Officer or employee of the United States. Whoever falsely assumes and pretends to be an officer or employee acting under the authority of the United States or any department, agency, or officer thereof, and acts as such or in such pretended character, demands or obtains any money. Understand what it's saying here. Paper, document, or thing of value shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. So again, another 3-year sentence for whoever falsely assumes or pretends to be money, property, labor, or services, or in such pretended character demands or obtains any money, paper, document, or thing of value. And I don't care if you do it through color of language, color of law, color of your suit. I don't care if you want to actually dress up as a clown and come in with all kinds of colors in your rainbow bullshit. Don't matter to me. It's a false claim. Show me, Your Honor, that you're a United States citizen. Show me, Your Honor, that you're a resident. See, those are claims you don't want to make yourself either, because you know they're not true. You can't be the business. You can be the living soul that conducts the affairs and signs the, such as signing the documentation that motions things, puts things in motion, sets things in motion. You can be the cause, and you can have certain effects, all real and personal effects, because I said so, and that's why I tell you to coin your words or purse your lips. So what was the other thing I was wanting to talk about, JG? Greetings, Iman. How you doing tonight, sister? Do you remember what I was wanting to talk about, JG?
All is well.
Good to see you. JG, do you remember what I was wanting to talk about?
Yes, the synchronicity again, brother. The same thing you're viewing tonight is the same thing I was going over today. All praises to the Most High. Love you, brothers.
Absolutely. Go ahead, JG. All right. Well, I can't think of what it was at the moment. I know there was something else I was wanting to mention, but having a brain fart. So let's continue on with the biblical scriptures that I was talking about then, because this is important. It's important for me to express how I correlate it all through the scriptures, and I hope in my expression here that you guys see what I'm trying to do. So I've got them lined up. Let's see here. I have to share this screen instead. And what we have here is Deuteronomy 18, King James Version of the Bible. And what it's talking about here, Deuteronomy is the second law in Scripture. When it comes to the Tanakh and Jewish, they've got the first five, and the first one is Leviticus, second one is Deuteronomy. And here in Deuteronomy 18, they're going to refer back to Leviticus and the Levites. And I think this is important to show the correlation of how those laws tie together, the first law and the second law, as to the claim and the mistakes as it goes to the inheritance. So let's take a look. Deuteronomy 18, and it's a rather short one. It's got 22 verses in it. And it says, the priests, the Levites, and all the tribe of Levi shall have no part nor inheritance with Israel. Okay? They shall eat the offerings of the Lord made by fire and his inheritance. Therefore shall they have no inheritance among their brethren. The Lord is their inheritance, as he hath said unto them. That goes with the Colossians 3:23 and 24 that I read earlier. Whatever your task, work heartily as serving the Lord and not men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. Isaiah 54:17, no tongue shall prosper against you. Ye shall rise up against anyone that places judgment. This is the inheritance of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me. You're not supposed to be doing it without the Lord. And this shall be the priests due from the people, from them that offer a sacrifice, whether it be ox or sheep, and they shall give unto the priest the shoulder and the 2 cheeks and the maw. The first fruit also of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the first of the fleece of thy sheep shalt thou give them. For the Lord thy God hath chosen him out of all thy tribes, to stand to minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons forever. Okay? Understand this part of it, as he was set forth in motion to fulfill an obligation. In that obligation, he is due an upcomings, a first fruits of the corn and the wine. This is the tax. This is the gratuities that the people are supposed to give unto him as a priest. And remember, today we have priests that sit on benches. That's the same connotation. So we're going to look at Romans 13 here real shortly. And if a Levite come from any of thy gates out of all Israel, where he sojourned, and come with all the desire of his mind unto the place which the Lord shall choose in all the lands of your possession. Leviticus, the first law, Leviticus 25 verses 23 through 25. Again, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And come with all the desire of his mind unto the place which the Lord shall choose, as strangers and sojourners with me, in all the lands of your possession. Ye shall grant a redemption to the land. Then he shall minister in the name of the Lord his God, as all his brethren the Levites do, which stand there before the Lord. And if your brother be waxen and poor, and sold off his belongings, you come along as his kin and redeem him. You shall redeem him. This is the actions which stand there before the Lord, always in the Lord. They shall have like portions to eat, beside that which cometh of the sale of his patrimony. So along with being a priest, the people will give him a natural upcomings, and there will be those that will take the message and use it as part of their healing, and in their wellness, when their cup welleth over, they will give back as well. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. Thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. He is no respecter of persons for this reason. It is a false patronymical, it's heresy. Again, in my opinion. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, and that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. This is the spell of illness. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. He was born of your mother's water, which he discharged that little man of her waters, and he took his first breath of life. She became a living soul. The record does not reflect that, people. The record reflects a heathen bastard. A person was entered into the statistical vitals to jurisdiction. Or charmer, or consulter with familiar spirits, or wizard, or necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. When you learn to see the abomination, he's going to give you solutions. You don't use the abomination. In other words, I am not the person. I'm telling you, I do not have a name. Only persons are named. And that is merely a descriptor of the true and real thing known as an adjective, the living soul. Again, God formed man of the dust of the ground, and he merged with his mother's waters. And when he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, that man became a living soul. Meaning he is no longer a man, though there is a record personally identifying the characteristics. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. Don't go anywhere without him. The Lord is my protector. He is my guide. I shall not waver. My own little three verses. I call them Hotep Sekimi 1, verses 1, 2, and 3. For these nations which thou shalt possess. That's at Jeremiah 1:5. We'll read that too. Hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. Hearkened. Did anybody hearken unto him? Again, nobody made the memorandum that a living legacy heir has arrived of the kingdom of God. And unto diviners, but as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee so to do. He will show you how to do it without somebody else's say-so. He will show you how to do it without going to fortune tellers, doctors, giving you prenatal exams, and telling you, oh my goodness, your baby's got a problem. We can see it right here. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me, unto him ye shall hearken. The people wanted this. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, because they begged for a prophet. According to all that thou desirest of the Lord thy God in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of my Lord God, of the Lord my God, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. And the Lord said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and I will put my words into his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. So again, see his great fire. We speak the words of the great fire. You have to put some fire into your words, folks. The immutable promise, we'll speak about that, and it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, and which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. So if you're going to profess that you speak in the name of God, you damn well better make sure you're speaking the truth. Do not make aught against your brother by bearing false witness, because you don't know any difference. It can still cause harm. When you do that, now you owe an obligation to repair things. That's the only thing we're trying to avoid. We've never been taught how to do so. Let's see. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, That is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. Folks, this is the fictional entity, the fictional presumption presented. When as prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, if the effect has a cause, you go back to the cause. If a cause is stated that is going, some action is going to happen, but there's no effect, then it never happened. So when people say they're a United States citizen, and you know that certain things have to happen, have to take place to cause that effect, then you have to understand the fictional value of what was impossible. You are making it in effect, and that is impossible.
Can you word that in redneck terms?
If the birth certificate standards show that it's impossible that you are a United States citizen because there is no registry which is required, can you then state that you are a United States citizen? Can you even state that a United States citizen even exists? There's no record of it. You want to show me, JG? This is the question I put out to every attorney, every scholar, every public official, president on down, executive, the governor on down, all those notices. This is the question I pose to them for the minimum birth standards. If it's impossible, then why are you enforcing it? Where are your enforcement powers and authorities to do that which is impossible? If I told you that someday I've got $2, Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Ann, or Raggedy Andy, and I give you those $2 as a gift, and I tell you someday that those $2 are going to wake up and be living beings, would you believe me?
No.
Why?
Let me give you a good answer here.
Is it real simple? It's just impossible.
Yeah, it's just that's like.
So what's the difference if they put an impossibility before you, and then everybody around you says that, yeah, I'm a resident. Yeah, I'm a United States citizen. Yeah, I pledge allegiance to that flag of the United States because I'm a United States citizen. Prove
right,
it.
You buy into the fairy tale.
Exactly. Exactly. Are you required to buy into a fairy tale and live your life in a fictional realm?
No.
Is there any qualification to require you to do that for even 1 second?
But it's like they want you. They're trying to really lure you into the fairy tale world. You know?
Absolutely, because they're reeled into it as well. That's the indoctrination, the cognitive dissonance.
Right. They want to bring you into the insanity.
Yep.
Literally insane people trying to bring you into the insanity.
Yep. And when
they bought the fairy tale, it changed their whole mind of behavior. They're now a different person, and they're trying to bring you into it.
Exactly. I had that Brittany gal yesterday. She's convinced that she herself is a United States business. She knows. I asked her, did you realize that a United States citizen is a United States business? She said, yes. I said, are you a United States citizen? She says, yes.
Right, she bought it.
Yeah, this is the rationale of people that are serving in these public offices. For crying out loud, this is getting ridiculous. This is an full-grown adult woman that used to be a debt collector and is convinced that she can get on the stand and testify as a first-hand witness that by the paperwork, yes, in fact, my companion owes a debt to Portfolio Recovery Associates. Without a contract and without being a resident of the state in the judicial system, which we can prove. She seems to think everybody is automatically has a contract and is a resident in a judicial district, a special maritime territorial district jurisdiction of the United States. She can't testify to any of it because none of it true. She's willing to lie on her brother because she's got a paycheck. She's just doing her job. So Romans 13 says, let every soul be subject under the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Remember I told about that discharge your mother's water, born unto the a prophet unto the nations, ordained of God. Jeremiah 1:5. We're going to read that at the end. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resisteth shall receive to themselves damnation.
Keith, where are you reading this from? Is this a part of some law website, a government website?
This is from the Bible.
No, I'm saying that website you just had pulled up.
Yeah, that's King James Version.
.com?
Let me see. Yep. Let me
All right.
see what I got here.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Bible Gateway. King James Version Bible Gateway. And so the next one is the one I read earlier, Colossians. And whosoever ye do. And notice the use of whosoever here. 18 U.S.C. 911 and 912 as it relates to 1 U.S.C. 1, person and whoever. We'll go back and look at that one too. And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. So why would you want to claim to be a United States citizen serving a false patronymical father as a citizen, a business, or a officer or employee of the United States? Again, the false patronymical matrix. The next one is Titus 3:8. This is a faithful saying. This is why we walk in faith and follow the Lord only. This is a faithful saying, and this is why faith works, is because we're shewed upon the knowledge by our study and observances that through doing the same things and getting progressive results, we are gaining wisdom and experience, prosperity and abundance.
I thought I'll be right back. I got to use the non-transgender person bathroom.
Awesome. Do a video for us, right? This is a faithful saying, and these things I will, that thou affirm constantly, that they which have believed in God be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable unto men. And that is because, like I just said, we study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, being a priest, a prophet unto the nation, getting our just dues in those gratuities that people are giving forth, rightly dividing the word of truth as that prophet. And then we have Ephesians, where it says, Ephesians 1:11, pay attention. in whom also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestinated according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will. Again, Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed thee in the belly, we'll be reading that, along with Hebrews 6, verses 14 through 20, wherein it's the counsel of his own will, purpose who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will, because he gave oath and sealed it with his immutable promise, because there is no one else to shew an oath unto. So we see here in Isaiah 54, in whole, this is where we're going to read about that no tongue shall prosper against you. But 54 in whole, like I said earlier, the children of the desolate are more than those of the married wife. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear, break forth into singing and cry aloud. Thou that didst not travail with child, talking about the barren women, the women that do not have children. Sing, for there are more children of the desolate than the children of the married wife. This is a moral standing putting towards the women and men. That marriage is a consecration of great responsibility. And it doesn't necessarily come with procreation with each other to bring forth your own children. But again, the inherent partnership under a covenant of God, that you as children of God yourself in that partnership will be a lookout for all children, particularly those that might be desolate and don't have possibly husbands in the house, or are mothered by whores, hookers, things like that. It's very imperative to understand why we're supposed to stand up in judgment against these fuckers. Excuse my language. Saith the Lord, enlarge the place of thy tent to take those particular desolate children, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thine habitation. Spare not, lengthen thy cords and strengthen thy stakes. This is when you have that to give, and you can give it unto the priests. But if there be children, you give it unto the children, and pay your supplication to the priests by your just honoring in following their directive to do as they are showing you. And then when you're done fulfilling those desolate children and you have more wealth in you, then you can continue back giving a tithe, a first of your stock. But while you've got desolate children, the priesting is being done for those very desolate children. If you have desolate children coming along, that is the first thing to feed. In all senses of the word, of feeding a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime, so that he can then go out upon the world and be a priest himself and teach others.
Who came up with the King James Version?
I imagine they say it was King James, of course, but he used other people as interpreters, supposedly Shakespeare and Bacon and whatnot. So it's all up to interpretation. But the ending concept is that I'm hoping I'm expressing these moral concepts as the allegories I see.
Right. No, I'm just
okay.
The same way they're trying to get us into like the insanity, trying to trick us with the fiction.
Right.
So similar with the King James Version.
Yes, and that's why it's important to pick these things up and read them yourself, Because as we get to verse 17, in no tongue shall prosper against you, you shall rise up against any judgment. That means you have to learn those tongues so you can rise up against those judgments. Otherwise, you may not recognize the judgments. You only may recognize the wrongs, and they've judged you and done what they think is right. You have to be able to comprehend what the judgments are, because that's the cause that creates the outcoming effect of the wrong.
Right. It's a massive brainwashing, one big mind control operation.
I was on a panel earlier, and they were talking about the flat Earth, globe Earth, and toroidal currents, and this and that. And I had to show them the toroidal currents that exist in LAW. Now, some of them wanted to talk about land, air, and water. And that's not what I was speaking about there. It's light, air, and water. You have toroidal air currents that you can visibly see through electronic devices. You have water. You can see toroidal currents in the water. You have light that you can see toroidal reflections or refractions on glass as you look at various images through various imaging equipment and stuff. And that whole setup, the whole conversation is just a matter of understanding how the same thing happens in various different jurisdictions. And when you understand how all those vibrations work, it's just like when I speak. The scripture tells us that it's not what goes in that is evil, but what comes out. And it tells us that when he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, man became a living soul. When we breathe in through our nostrils, folks, it goes through the nasal chamber, which creates toroidal currents, which increases the temperature, because now you have a force that allows the air in your nasal cavity to expand at a faster rate, creating a frictional variance. Slow air and fast air, and then it's being slowed down by being restricted as it goes down your throat into your lungs again. So it creates toroidal currents that heat up the air and create an energy variance. It's a positive energy buildup, and that's what we're talking about. That's the prosperity and abundance. That's what we're supposed to replenish. We're not supposed to use negative energies and draw and pull from other people. We're supposed to use, like I said earlier, that wellness to welleth over and use it as ability to give unto the priests or the desolate children, and be able to determine by your choice how much that is, or if you should give it all to the priests or all to the children, or split it up into any other proportions. It's self-determination and knowing how well you are. Know thyself, heal thyself. People ask me, how are you doing today? I'm pretty well. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So we'll go back
I had somebody yesterday, hey, like, how you doing, man? Oh, I'm good. I achieved solitude. And they just looked at me like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So we continue on. It says, for thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. Okay? Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed. Again, rightly dividing the word of truth. Study to shew yourself worthy and approved, and you cannot be ashamed, even by their false judgment. That's what gives you the heart to stand up and roar like a lion and say, hey, you demon, you heathen, you liar. Neither be thou confounded, for thou shalt not be put to shame. For thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth, and shalt not remember the reproach of thy widowhood any more. This is about putting down the childish things yourself, so you can see things in an objective observance, putting away your emotions, so you don't upset the child and take care of that desolate child. The more you can handle your emotions, this is why it's important to leave your emotions out of court. The more you leave your emotions out, the more the child will learn how to leave its emotions out and still be able to use the instinctive and intuitive sides of their brain, both left and right, cohesively together.
Yeah, but they can fuck you hard, and then you can't show emotions. You know, the system can really, really fuck with you. You can't. You know, you just got to be fake, right?
Yep, you got to understand to stand your ground. He spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. You have to be that steadfast to understand the commandments are already there. They are already set in motion. And because of that, you are an effect. All real and personal effects. I myself am an effect of my own thoughts. My physical presence is an effect of my thoughts.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. Goes on to say, for thy maker is thine husband. Again, we're talking about that false patronymical tribulation. The Lord of hosts is his name, not United States. And thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. The God of the whole earth shall he be called. The whole earth, not a portion of. For the Lord hath called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth, when thou wast refused, saith God. For a small moment have I forsaken thee. This is when you were refused. He flooded the earth, remember? He refused us, said we weren't any good, so he gave Noah a chance. For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee. The Spirit of God moves upon the face of the waters. So the face was on the face of the waters. The Spirit of God was on the face of the waters. And the face of the waters was on top of the earth. And the dark was within the deep. And nobody could see the face of God, the Spirit of God on the face of the waters, because he flooded the earth, except for Noah and those with him. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer, but with everlasting kindness. That is his promise of everlasting kindness. For this is as the waters of Noah unto me. For as I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I would not be wroth with thee. This is another promise he made. Nor rebuke thee. For the mountains shall depart and the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee. Neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord that hath mercy on thee. O thou afflicted, tossed with the tempest, and not comforted. Talking about those that are confused. Behold, I will lay the stones with fair colors, and lay thy foundations with sapphire, and I will make thy windows of agates, and thy gates of carbuncles, and all thy borders of pleasant stones. And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord. You will no longer be confused. And great shall be the peace of thy children. Again, it's always for the children. That's the inheritance. And you have to be able to teach righteousness. This is the true manna of all mankind. In righteousness shalt thou be established. You're not established in trust. You're not established in love. Just like you're not established in hate, you're not established in lies. You're established in righteousness. And that comes from truth only. Thou shalt be far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near thee. Behold, they shall surely gather together, but not by me. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall for thy sake. This is why I say, if you're not with me, you're against me. If you do not stand with me, you stand in opposition to me. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy. This is where I make a reference to myself. My voice is the fire of truth, and I have been brought forth as an instrument formed of the dust of the ground, and rendered with the waters of my mother, discharged as a man, and the very breath of life is what bloweth the coals within me. I am and have been created as a waster to destroy that which is false. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. And when we look at Hebrews 6, verses 13 through 20. For when God made promise to Abraham, so another promise, because he could swear by no greater, he sware by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless thee. I am blessed. He is my Redeemer. He has redeemed me and called me by thy name. I am his. And multiplying I will multiply thee. And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. That's the married wife, gentlemen.
Keith, can I show you something real quick? Can I play a video and you guys just listen?
What kind of video we got?
It's an interaction I had with a cop. It's only 40 seconds long.
Go ahead.
All right.
Been around here? Do you have ID with you?
For what?
What?
For what?
I just want to see it, just to talk to you.
Nah,
You look familiar to me. Have you been around here before? What's your first name? Give me I think we've talked before.
Never talked.
Never? You sure?
Nope.
All right. Well, I don't know. What's your plan?
Get some work.
Okay. Around here?
Yeah.
Okay. You currently on probation or anything like that?
Nah.
No?
Nope.
Okay. When was the last time you were arrested?
Never had.
When?
Never been arrested.
You've never been arrested?
Nah.
I find that hard to believe, but okay.
What would you say? Interesting, right? What would you say he was doing there?
He was fishing. And understand the importance and the power behind what the last statement he said. I find that kind of hard to believe.
And that's when I said,
he would run across
hey, man.
somebody that's never been arrested. Because in his heart, his mind, he believes everybody has been arrested, is a criminal, and therefore he has a reason, right, to make a consensual contact as if though you are worthy of investigating.
Right, and I took that as disrespectful. I find that hard to believe, but okay. And that's when I told him, all right, well, I'm done talking to you. And I just walked away.
Great job.
But I'll talk to you about that later on.
Yeah, it's people getting hurt up in their emotions and feelings, and that's what we're talking about. It's a matter of just being correct. Direct, making sure you know what you're talking about. So let's go back to it. As it continues on, it says, for men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife. This is why I accept God's oath, no one else's. He's the only one that guarantees an end to strife if I ask for it. But I might want to be careful what I ask for, so I do. I make sure to coin my words and purse my lips. Wherein God, willing more abundantly to shew unto the heirs of promise the immutability of his council confirmed it by an oath. So again, it is immutable. They cannot mute your testimony. You have to boldly speak as you oughtly, rightly dividing the word of truth, because you can show yourself studied and approved by showing your sources and showing the connections and how it supposedly works. That by two immutable things in which it is impossible for God to lie. That's why we use God's words. If it's impossible for God to lie, and we assure we are using God's words, and everybody knows God's words, and therefore they recognize your words as true, you got two immutables. We might have a strong consolation. This is why we seek counsel in God, who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us, which we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth into that within the veil, piercing that corporate veil, whither the forerunner is for us entered, even Jesus, made an high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So again, it's predestinated. Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I was formed in the belly, I knew thee. So let's take a look at it.
Oh, and by the way, that cop's last name was Faking Gay. Officer Faking Gay.
I'm sure. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Where did that go wrong? Where is it we do not recognize each other as ordained prophets unto the nations, that we give that up and agree to be sanctioned by the ordinances of the nations that we claim our patronage to? Patronage. When you're age of majority to recognize who your real daddy is, I want to ask you, who's your daddy? And I want to listen to all kinds of insane responses. Then the last one, and this again wraps everything up right back to the Postal Service, guys. Again, Jeremiah 51:31, King James Version. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to shew the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. It's over. Game over.
Taken at one end. Taken at one end. What exactly?
City's on its way down.
Gotcha.
One post shall run to meet another, messenger to messenger, to shew unto the king of Babylon that in this war your city has started to fall. It's a process. You're giving them notice. One post shall run to meet another. That's your notice. First duty in law is legal notice, and that legal notice is done by posting. And you have a right to choose your post, military or diplomatic. Consequently enough, many people walk out of high school with a high school diploma and never pick up another book, never read another motherfucking thing, to behest of their own ego to go out and make a good life for themselves, a woman, and some children, when no one's ever taught them how to do so in any semblance of a way, with the exception of fraudulent, unconscionable contracting.
Yeah, I mean, public school, the whole thing with public school is to train people. It's not even about education. It's about training you to be a way socially.
Yeah, it's based
So
on the Prussian military training.
right.
So anyway, that's the basis of what I'm doing with the tort claim, guys. And like I said, it's the governor that appoints the judicial officers. So that's why I sent the tort claim to the governor as it relates to the failure to appear for jury duty with Andrea, the judicial officer that caused the subsequent effects that are going on now. She's one of the ones that did cause that. But myself being a party in it, I have to recognize my part in it in being part of that cause as well. So I have to admit my mistakes, show her my mistakes, show her where the other mistakes on her side might be, and hopefully express to them, anybody, not her, but in reference here, I'm talking about Brittany, but express to anybody that in their public service, which is a public trust, they have a duty of care to make sure that the integrity of the record is there. If I'm standing there telling them, no, it's in error, they have a duty of care to work with me in finding out what's wrong with it so they can create a resolution, the doctrine of necessity, the ability to create a law where one would not exist because specific circumstances demand for it. And that precludes or also includes the concept of the safe harbor exceptions that I talked about earlier, where they can take something that doesn't have any value, but because it's got to be used in a certain way, they can create a value for it, use it in that valued system, but it still maintains for its primary use outside of that system. I'll explain that with the battery charger. What we have is a system that is depending upon credit in a currency system. The battery's dead. The alternator's gone out or something and it's not allowing the battery to charge up. Whatever that problem is, the neighbor comes to me with their dead car. He knows I've got a battery charger. He wants me to hook it up to his car so he can start his car and get on down the road. Okay. I hook it up. I charge it up. He starts it. I now get my currency back by turning it off, unplugging it, wrapping the cord up, and wheeling its happy ass back to its storage spot. He doesn't have the right after that to keep my charger. This is in effect what they're trying to do with this these third-party debt collections. You charged a system up with a line of credit, gave it currency. You didn't fulfill your obligation somehow because they presupposed that you weren't the creditor and swapped places and called themselves a creditor. Now that original creditor that they call themselves charges off the debt, saying it's no longer current. You get where I'm going here? The language is specific and you have to understand how it's used as it relates to current and currency and time and with time being contract. The language is an amazing language. I'm telling you, it's very beautiful if you understand how it's used and how you can use it to create your own benefits, or at least expose them for what they are and not have to deal with them much further than that. At least that's my hope. Again, this is my intention of going forth with the creation of a remedy to provide a resolution for that which is impossible by creating a private relief. That's it, private relief law. That's what I wanted to show you. See, I knew it'd come up again. So let's look at that. Because that's your true obligation. If you find something that's impossible, you still have to find some way to align with their use. Okay? Because you live intermingled with them. You have to find some way of a similar use somewhere. So let's look up private relief laws in the United States. There it is. Private bills, that's it. Private bills is what they call them. And I've spoke on this before because when you enter a private bill for relief in equity, which is what we're talking about, they call it a private bill. And in the scholar or truth community or research community, legal community, whatever you want to call it here, many of us call it private relief remedy in equity. Private equity relief, things like that, because we're referring to equity. So let's take a look. Share this tab instead. Private bills, procedure in the House. Remember, I spoke about this. It's a House procedure. You go through the Senate and the House representatives. And in this case, I went to the governor as a matter of a tort claim against the judicial officer. That's the proper administrative process for me at this point to get the ball rolling. But as part of the remedy, after I transfer the title, expenses incidental to transfer title, part of the private bill as a relief in equity is the reversion and merger of the estate in a private trust, which is, like I said, it's already established with the Postal Service as a enterprise payment system account in the name of Keith Orton Little Estate and Trust. It's just waiting for the funds. Okay. Says a private bill is one that provides benefits to specified individuals, including corporate bodies. Individuals sometimes request relief through private law when administrative or legal remedies are exhausted. Okay, so what we're talking about here is a legal remedy under the administrative process, which is impossible. The United States business is impossible until they create a birth registry in the United States. There will never be any evidence of a United States business registered in the United States. But Congress seems more often to view private legislation as appropriate when no other remedy is available, and when enactment would, in a broad sense, afford equity. This is the doctrine of necessity to create a private relief law that would afford equity, where equity follows the law and the law it's following does not provide equity. Provides for a creation of remedy. From 1817 through 1971, most Congresses enacted hundreds of private laws, but since then, the number has declined significantly as Congress has expanded administrative discretion to deal with many of the situations that tended to give rise to private bills. This is the Chevron doctrine back in the 60s or 70s or whenever it was that allowed for federal government that expanded the delegation of their authority to the state's administrative procedure. To use these judges, to allow these judges to use their own personal discretion to interpret the law. And that's why I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, they've gone back and reviewed that. The federal Supreme Court has gone back and reviewed that, and they've made a statement about it that, no, that's not correct. The administration has no authority to do such. They have to go by the legislative interpretation, the legislative intent. Since 2012, 5 private laws have been enacted. 2012. Says since 2012, 5 private laws have been enacted. Provisions, or private provisions, are also occasionally included in public legislation. The Senate considers private bills using the same procedures that are used to consider other legislation. Remember Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill. It's the same procedure, just like I told you. When you go to create your bill, you have to present it to the Senate and House of Representatives to go through legislation. I don't suggest you do that at the state level. I suggest you do the, and again, I am not a legal scholar of any sort. This is just my interpretation according to my research. And it says that you exhaust the administrative process at the state level. And when you do that, that administrative process that is exhausted at the state level is now moved to the judicial forum of the federal government to encompass the proper remedy. Subjects of private bills, introduction of private bills, committee consideration, floor considerations, got to have equal consideration. Senate committee and the House floor consideration. Further proceedings, author information. Subjects of private bills, domestic claims against the government, judiciary. Foreign claims against the government, foreign affairs. Patents and copyrights, judiciary. Vessel documentation, transportation and infrastructure. Immigration, I should mention, because it's residency status, visa classification, but that's a presumption. That's the main presumption that everybody takes under, that you're a resident. Residency determination. That's in relations to immigration documentation. Understand that. Taxation. Resident. For purposes of income tax. Ways and Means. House Ways and Means Committee. Public lands. Natural resources. Veterans benefits. Civil service status. Oversight and reform. Medical. Energy and commerce. That's your human resources. Natural resources, human resources is your energy and commerce. And that's done through medical, health, and human services. They're the ones that provide the human resources for workforce development. It's a labor union. Okay? So let's go back and see what else we got. Statutes at large and private laws from Congress. So what we see is 94 Stat S 2027, 1222 of 1980. It was one bill, and it's a bill for the relief of James Daniel Bronson, a bill for the relief of Anna Marlene Orantes, a bill for the relief of Francisco Pang, 1222, 1980. These are all 1980. Okay. That's 96 Congress, 1979, 1980. Okay. 2012. What happened to the list? There's one. A bill for the relief of Saparuchi Chukwu, whatever it is. I don't know. Okay. Let's go to the next one. 2013. None. 2015, 16. None. Oops. 2017-18. An act to authorize the President to award the Medal of Honor to John L. Connally for acts of valor during the Vietnam War while a member of the Marine Corps. How honorable. See what it says. It's one page. Authorization for award of Medal of Honor. That's basically all it is. Okay, give a description of acts of valor are the actions of then Gunnery Sergeant John L. Connally during combat operations from January 31st, 1968 to February 6th, 1968. So for a week, during the Vietnam War as a member of the Marine Corps, for which he was previously awarded the Navy Cross. Congratulations. Honor, honor, respect. Oh, you guys didn't even see that. Here it is. One page. One page. So let's go back to the tab. 2019 to 2020, none. 2021, 2022, we have 3. For the relief of Arpita Kurtakur, Garish Kurtakur, and Vandana Kurtakur. For the relief of Maria Isabel Bueso Barrera, Alberto Buesa Mendoza, and Carla Maria Barrera de Bueso. For the relief of Rebecca Trimble. Okay, you saw the one for the reward. Let's take a peek at this one for Rebecca Trimble. It looks like it's a little bit more private, right? It's 2 pages. And it says, Private Law 117-1, an act for the relief of Rebecca Trimble. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Remember, we saw that scripture about assembly, right? In Congress assembled. Congress. Psalms 121, verse 8, the Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. This is the ingress and egress as we congress, walk with, as we walk in and walk out, as we walk with, sojourners and strangers with our Father which art in heaven on all of his lands. Go ahead, sister.
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Oh, your mic was open. So it says, Section 1, permanent resident status for Rebecca Trimble. In general, this ought to be interesting, notwithstanding subsections A and B of Section 201 of the Immigration and Nationality Act at 8 U.S.C. 1151. Rebecca Trimble shall be eligible for the issuance of an immigrant visa or for adjustment of status to that of an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence upon filing an application for issuance of an immigrant visa under Section 204 of that Act, 8 U.S.C. 1154, or for adjustment of status to lawful permanent resident. And now realizing, folks, that lawful permanent resident status is for income tax purposes, meaning that you have to have income. And of course, that income is relative to your trade or business, the performance of the functions of public office, in which you present a driver's license or an ID as a state employee, for income tax purposes on state business as a business of the United States. This is nothing I would put in, unless it's to qualify under the doctrine of necessity, a good identification that would allow for the diplomatic travel and not subject to interception. You know, kind of like what they speak, do not detain list. And we'll talk about that more at a later time. I'm going to talk to people about the diplomatic travel as it relates to the U.S. passport and not getting it through the U.S. passport, but through the Department of State and the Organization of American States, which is a totally different entity in the international forum under different treaties and such, where the international travel documentation is regulated. So anyway, waiver of grounds for removal or denial of admission. In general, notwithstanding Section 212A and 237A of the Immigration and Nationality Act, Rebecca Trimble may not be removed from the United States, denied admission to the United States, or considered ineligible for lawful permanent residence in the United States by reason of any ground for removal or denial of admission that is reflected in the records of the Department of Homeland Security or the Visa Office of the Department of State on the date of the enactment of this act. So the Department of State, as I stated, in relations to the Organization of American States and the diplomatic travels, and that all has to do with the misidentification that I spoke about earlier, which is the redress authority through the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security is the one that you redress for grievances for misidentification. And it's the Department of State that will handle that misidentification through Bureau of Consular Affairs, because you're in fact foreign, but you have to be able to express what that foreign element is and what that travel situation or circumstance is. If you do it for any kind of commercial or treaty business, it's going to be a licensure. If you're doing it for diplomatic pleasure, at your leisure, as you're a stranger and sojourner with your Father which art in heaven, sojourning his lands, and doing it at your pleasure for no business, at your pleasure, not for income tax purposes, not on state business, not for individual business, but on my pleasure to learn myself and to help educate others. That's it. Rescission of outstanding order of removal. The Secretary of Homeland Security shall rescind any outstanding order of removal or deportation, or any finding of inadmissibility or deportability that has been entered against Rebecca Trimble by reason of any ground described in paragraph 1. Actually, that part sounds pretty good. See, I think she's doing it for protection of being able to support that she is allowed the same rights as anybody else of being beneficial or receiving beneficial things. Application and payment of fees. Subsection A and B shall apply only if the application for issuance of immigrant visa or the application for adjustment of status are filed with the appropriate fees within 2 years after the date of the enactment of this act. So she's giving herself leeway of travel room for 2 years. So if it doesn't happen, means she's left the area. Reduction of immigrant visa numbers. Upon the granting of immigrant visas or permanent residence to Rebecca Trimble, the Secretary of State shall instruct the proper officer to reduce by 1 during the current or next following fiscal year the total number of immigrant visas that are made available to natives of the country of birth of Rebecca Trimble under Section 203A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. If applicable, the total number of immigrant visas that are made available to natives of the country of birth of Rebecca Trimble under Section 208E of that act kind of ends there. If applicable, the total number of immigrant visas that are made available to natives of the country of birth should be, maybe we'll have to read that, find out, but this was approved December 27th, 2022. Interesting. Oops, did I lose screen share? I did. Let me pick up where we were at. Private laws. And let's go back. Let's check last year first. None for last year. So let's go back in time. Let's go back to 1951. 82nd Congress. Now, under 82nd Congress, they had all these private relief laws. Relief, 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 relief. Relief, 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 relief. You see how it's gone out of practice? Let's pick one. 3-5 of 1952. Here, let's go to 7/13 of 1952. Today's date, 1952. Oh, they don't have it yet. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Coming up. Okay, so there's not a 7/13, but there's a 7/12. Let's pick one out. An act for the relief of William J. Martin. Says, let's blow this up a little bit. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that for the purposes of Section 4 and 9 of the Immigration Act 1924 as amended, the minor children Leopold Laufer and Elfried Laufer shall be held and considered to be natural-born alien children of Mr. and Mrs. Adam Roth, citizens of the United States. For the relief of William J. Martin, being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that the Comptroller General of the United States is hereby authorized and directed to cancel the indebtedness of William J. Martin in the amount of $146.86, arising out of the transportation of household goods from Leland, Mississippi to Arlington, Virginia, while he was an employee of the United States Department of Agriculture in September 1947. So as an employee of the Department of Agriculture living in Leland, Mississippi, they had him moved to Arlington, Virginia. He saved up his receipts, which totaled $146.86, to move him and his household goods from Leland, Mississippi to Arlington, Virginia, and he got a private relief law to reimburse him for what he paid. A private right of action because it cost him on the private side, and he has private receipts showing that he had to pay to move despite being employed by the federal government. They're supposed to pay those expenses. At least it should be contracted in there. If you don't know what you're doing on those contracts, that's part of the problem. That's why I'm doing these videos. It's all about contracting. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. So as a beneficiary deemed to be the true owner, you really want to make it beneficial to yourself. You want to be very efficient and effective as to what you cause to happen for your benefit. And with that, I think we're done for the night. I will come back with some documentation on my companion's part tomorrow, I believe, to go over that. I mentioned earlier something about walking them up to the cliff so they can fall off and land on their own sword. Learning to defeat one's opponent without fighting. You give them a setup of questions that walk them right off the edge. They have no ability to defend themselves because they're heathen liars. They're heathen liars that wouldn't know the difference. Damn it. That wouldn't know the difference of truth if it hit them in the face. So with that, we're done for tonight. Like I said, I'll come back with some more specifics on my companion's case and show you what we're going to go forth doing a tort claim again against them with the governor and giving them a much thicker and supportive file, but with succinct exculpatory evidence in the form of admissions. Admit or deny. Circle 1, Joyce is a resident of the state of Iowa. They can't make that claim unless they look at the record, and the record reflects that she is a resident. But just because the record reflects she's a resident doesn't mean that she is. That's why we let our yea be our yea and our nay be our nay. That's why we hearken the record. We're not going to go after the person. We're going after the record. We merely need the person to work with us in the correction of that record. When they deny doing that, they are breaching their duty of due process and due care. You got anything on the way out, JG?
They fold on their imagination.
Oh no.
I'm sorry, they fold on their fairy tale.
You can fold their fairy tale, but I don't know that they're always going to fold on their fairy tale. Like I said, Brittany, who professed that she's been in debt collection, she's got plenty of experience. She's been working down here at this courthouse for 9 years now as their finance officer, and she professed that she is a United States citizen. She is a United States business, and that is an impossibility. You cannot be a living soul and a fiction known as a United States business. That does not exist. You show me your United States business.
Yeah, I got you.
All right. Well, with that, I thank you again, JG, Iman, John, everybody that comes up and shares some time on the panel. I appreciate it. Iman, I do believe I answered your email earlier. I will check my emails again before I go to rest tonight. In the meantime, you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you. Have a good night, and I'll see you again next time. May or may not be tomorrow. I'm not on a regular schedule at this point in time because, like I said, I do have a lot of things going on. So I'm trying to make sure I keep our paperwork straight. And like I said, the issue of my companion's coming up again. They're wanting to come after her for another $4,000. I knew it would likely come, but that's why I've got her other case already bundled up, and we're working on that to get that out. to hopefully provide an estoppel for this next case. So in the meantime, God bless. Have a good night. We'll see you again. Where'd you go, brother?
Still alive.
Oh, there you are. Gotcha. So what's going on?
It says you're still alive.
Oh, yeah, we better end, huh?
Woohoo.